In Keller, Texas, 2011, millionaire Greg Williams was shot point-blank in the head. His wife Michele called 911 claiming an intruder, but the gun was wiped clean, no forced entry, and her story changed multiple times. This is the Texas Black Widow case. Back in 2011, Greg Williams seemed to embody the American dream. From humble beginnings, he carved out success as a self-made entrepreneur, building a thriving multi-million-dollar IT company named DFWIT Pro. His rise was seen as proof of sharp intelligence and an unstoppable drive. In the business world, Greg Williams carried a reputation for being uncompromising. To some, he was a figure to be feared. To others, a man worthy of respect. His former wife, Kathy, remembered him as someone with a sharp temper and a relentless focus on work, yet beneath that intensity, his devotion to family and especially to his daughter Taylor remained clear. Despite his outward success, Greg carried the heavy weight of running a company, pressures that often left him isolated. In moments of solitude, he sought distraction online, turning to adult websites. It was during one of these late-night searches that he crossed paths with Michele, a meeting that would change the course of his life in ways he never imagined. Not long after meeting, Greg invited Michele to join him at a swinger club. Intrigued and open to the experience, she agreed. From that point on, the two began a relationship unlike anything Greg had known before, one that pushed boundaries and set the stage for what was to come. Michele's life was already complicated. She was still married. For her, tangled relationships weren't unusual. They were a familiar pattern that often led to chaos. Michele grew up in Hurst, Texas, with her younger sister, Lavra. Their father was known for chasing risky ventures and unreliable schemes, leaving the family in a constant state of uncertainty. That instability left its mark on Michele, shaping the choices she made and the way she navigated her own relationships. Choices that would, later, carry devastating consequences. Michele's life took a dramatic turn at just 17 when she left high school, LD Bell, after becoming pregnant. The child's father was John Paul Ray, but Michele told another young man, Kenneth O'Brien, that the baby was his. Trusting her, Kenneth married her and even enlisted in the military to support what he believed was his family. Eventually the truth surfaced, and the marriage collapsed, the first in a long line of relationships marked by deception and heartbreak. Michele's next serious relationship was with Brandon Dixon, a former classmate from high school. Together they had 2 children, but familiar patterns of deception soon surfaced. Michele remained legally married to Kenneth, even as she built a future with Brandon. When the truth came to light, she deflected with stories of fear and excuses, casting herself as the victim, a tactic that would become a recurring theme in her life. Michele found work as a dental assistant, but her time there ended abruptly when she was dismissed for theft. Rather than confessing, she spun another story for Brandon, claiming she had taken on a night job in telemarketing. In truth, Michele was working as a dancer at a topless bar, another secret layered into the growing web of deception that defined her life. Brandon's suspicions grew as their relationship unraveled, and he decided to seek proof. He placed a tape recorder in their home, hoping to confirm his fears. What he uncovered was devastating. Michele had been unfaithful with not just one, but 2 different men, and shockingly, the encounters had taken place inside their own house. Brandon's choice to end the marriage provoked a chilling response from Michele. In a fit of retaliation, she destroyed his prized saltwater fish collection and went even further, poisoning his Dalmatian dog. And to me, for this, she deserved 60 years in jail, let alone for what she did to Greg. Michele eventually returned to John Paul Ray, the father of her first child, and the 2 married for 8 years. But just like before, suspicions of infidelity began to surface. John's doubts were confirmed when he uncovered receipts that hinted at another man in Michele's life, among them a birthday card addressed to someone named Greg. John's discovery brought their marriage to an end. But for Michele, it marked the start of something entirely new, a chapter that would draw her deeper into deception and set the stage for the dangerous path ahead. Greg embodied everything Michele had been chasing. The promise of financial security, the prestige of social standing, and the lavish lifestyle she had always craved. Michele settled into Greg's mansion, stepping fully into the role of his partner. Their lives became a display of wealth and indulgence. Lavish parties filled the house. Matching Mercedes-Benz cars lined the driveway, and Greg even financed her cosmetic surgery. With household staff attending to her every need, Michele embraced the luxury she had always craved. Greg's inner circle was divided. Some believed Michele brought out a lighter side of him, noting he appeared happier than he had in years. Others, however, saw something different, a woman whose attention seemed fixed less on Greg himself and more on the wealth and status he provided. In 2008, Greg and Michele sealed their relationship with marriage. But the union didn't just alter Greg's personal life, it reshaped the dynamics within his family, introducing tensions and shifts that would ripple far beyond the wedding day. Kathy, Greg's ex-wife, had misgivings about Michele from the very start. She described her as dishonest and insincere, and her greatest worry centered on their daughter Taylor. Kathy noticed that Michele appeared to resent the strong bond between Greg and his daughter, and, disturbingly, seemed determined to drive a wedge between them. On the surface, Michelle's life with Greg glittered with glamour. She had the wealth, the home on Jacob Avenue, a very affluent area, and the luxuries she had always longed for. Yet beneath that polished exterior, discontent was brewing. Michele convinced herself she deserved more, that Greg no longer valued her, and her resentment deepened as she watched him devote affection and attention to his daughter Taylor. Michelle's jealousy soon spiraled into something far more dangerous. She fabricated a claim that 12-year-old Taylor was struggling with substance abuse. Greg dismissed the accusation, but the situation grew darker when Michele was hospitalized after ingesting opiates. From her hospital bed, she leveled a shocking charge, insisting that Taylor had slipped drugs into her coffee. Despite no evidence, Taylor was sent to a rehab center. Greg and Michele eventually welcomed a daughter, Michele. For a brief moment, her arrival seemed to steady their turbulent lives. Greg poured his energy into building a future for his family, envisioning a grand custom home outfitted with a swimming pool and an enormous aquarium, symbols of the stability and happiness he believed was finally within reach. Michele secured control over Greg's finances by taking on the role of bookkeeper, granting herself full access to the company's records. Greg believed the business was flourishing, but behind the scenes Michele was altering the numbers, concealing the reality that her extravagant spending was draining far more than they were earning. Greg poured himself into work, determined to provide Michele with every opportunity. He even purchased a frozen yogurt shop so she could have a business of her own. But Michele treated it casually, more like a pastime than a serious venture. Together, they also owned a fitness facility, a nod to their shared passion for bodybuilding. At one of these gatherings, Michele crossed paths with Jean Velas, a young bodybuilder and friend of her son. Despite the significant age gap and despite her marriage to Greg, whispers soon spread that Michele had begun an affair. Greg, absorbed in his work, appeared oblivious to the rumors swirling around him. Michelle's doubts about her marriage deepened, and she began to imagine a future without Greg. That future took on a startling new shape when she uncovered a crucial detail. Greg had taken out multiple life insurance policies. To Michele, it was more than paperwork. It was an opportunity that could alter everything. In August 2011, Michele persuaded Greg to add yet another life insurance policy, this one valued at $650,000. Trusting her intentions, Greg agreed without hesitation, convinced he was safeguarding her future and strengthening the security of their family. By October, Greg was elated about the new home they were building, a symbol of the future he envisioned for his family. But in the early morning hours of October 13, 2011, that dream was shattered. What should have been the start of a new chapter instead came to a sudden and violent end. At 4:40 a.m., a desperate call rang through to Keller police. On the line was Michele Williams, her voice frantic as she claimed an intruder had forced entry into their home and murdered her husband. Officers arrived swiftly at the Williams residence. On the porch, they found Michele, visibly shaken and distraught. Inside, their young daughter Michele lay asleep on the couch, untouched by the chaos. But in the master bedroom, the scene was grim. Greg lay motionless in bed, his lifeless body leaving no doubt that tragedy had struck. The evidence quickly cast doubt on Michelle's story. Outside the back door, officers discovered a handgun, a spent shell casing, and a wrench. Yet the scene didn't add up. There were no signs of forced entry, and the scratches on the door appeared deliberately staged. Inside, nothing had been stolen, leaving investigators to wonder if the supposed break-in was nothing more than a carefully constructed illusion. Most revealing of all was an empty container of Clorox wipes. To investigators, it suggested that someone had attempted to scrub away evidence, a chilling sign that the crime scene itself had been deliberately sanitized. Michele was quickly brought in for questioning. Far from being reserved, she appeared eager to speak, pressing detectives with a pointed question. At what point do I get to answer questions about Greg? The interrogation began at 6:40 a.m. and stretched on for more than 5 hours. Throughout the grueling session, Michele clung to her account, insisting on the same narrative: a home invasion, a shadowy intruder, and Greg's death. No matter how many times detectives pressed her, the story never changed. Michele told detectives she had drifted off to sleep on the couch beside Michele. According to her account, the quiet of the night was shattered when a loud noise from the master bedroom jolted her awake. Michele's tale of a masked intruder began to collapse under scrutiny. She insisted that after hearing the noise, she rushed to the bedroom, where she was struck on the head with a wrench. According to her account, a man dressed in black then seized Greg's gun and fired the fatal shot before vanishing into the night. Detectives grew increasingly skeptical. The crime scene simply didn't align with Michele's account. No fingerprints were recovered from the gun, the wrench, or even the door. Security cameras from neighboring homes revealed no suspicious vehicles in the area, only a pizza delivery driver, who was swiftly ruled out. When detectives pressed her further, Michele's composure cracked. Growing defensive, she lashed out when asked if she had cleaned anything after Greg was shot. Her voice rose into a scream. "I need an attorney. Obviously, my husband is dead and I am being blamed for it." As the hours dragged on, Michele's account began to waver. Detectives floated a scenario they had encountered before: a husband taking his own life, and a wife staging the scene to resemble murder, all in an effort to secure insurance payouts. At first, Michele rejected the detective's theory outright. But as the hours wore on, her resolve weakened. She shifted her account, now insisting that Greg had taken his own life, a stunning reversal that only deepened investigators' suspicions. In this revised account, Michele claimed Greg had taken Tylenol PM, complained of feeling unwell, and later shot himself while she slept on the couch beside their daughter. She admitted she panicked, fearing Michele would grow up burdened by the truth of her father's suicide. So she confessed. She staged the scene, crafting the illusion of a violent intruder to conceal what had really happened. Michele admitted to a chilling series of actions meant to disguise the truth. She wiped Greg's hands with Clorox wipes to erase any trace of gunshot residue, cleaned the weapon itself, and dragged a screwdriver across the back door to mimic forced entry. To complete the illusion, she even struck herself in the face with a wrench, leaving a bruise that would lend credibility to her story. Greg's family and friends rejected Michele's account outright. His mother, Betty Middlebrooks, remembered him as upbeat and brimming with plans only weeks earlier. And his ex-wife, Kathy, dismissed the suicide claim entirely, insisting Greg would never have taken so much as an aspirin to end his life. Michele's actions in the aftermath of Greg's death only fueled suspicion. She wrote an $18,000 check from his business account to cover her attorney's fees. Soon after, she sold the family's frozen yogurt shop on Craigslist for $50,000 and, even more startling, unloaded Greg's thriving IT company for a mere $8,000. At the same time, she began filing claims on his 3 life insurance policies, together valued at nearly $800,000. But there was a fatal flaw in Michele's plan. Each of Greg's life insurance policies carried a suicide clause. If he died by his own hand within 2 years of the policy start, no payout would be made. All 3 policies were less than 2 years old. On her claim forms, Michele listed the cause of death as homicide, a direct contradiction to the sworn statement she had given police. It was a vigilant insurance clerk who finally raised the alarm. While reviewing Michele's claim, the clerk searched Greg's name online and uncovered the troubling circumstances of his death. Recognizing the contradictions, the clerk promptly alerted authorities, adding yet another layer of suspicion to Michele's story. On November 3, 2011, the Tarrant County Medical Examiner released Greg's autopsy report. The conclusions were decisive. Greg's death was a homicide, not a suicide. The gunshot wound could not have been self-inflicted. The weapon had been discharged from at least 6 inches away. Toxicology results added another blow to Michele's story, revealing a sedative in Greg's system but no trace of Tylenol PM, despite her claims. Forensic testing revealed Michele's jacket bore traces of gunshot residue along the cuffs and sleeves, evidence consistent with her having fired a weapon. The finding tying her directly to the fatal shot. Armed with mounting evidence, investigators finalized their case. On January 9, 2012, Michele Williams was taken into custody outside a local gym. She was formally charged with murder, tampering with evidence, and filing a false police report. Her bond was set at $82,000, a stark reminder of how far suspicion had shifted against her. Michele Williams walked free after just 8 days in custody. While awaiting trial, she wasted little time in reshaping her life. She entered a public relationship with her son's friend Gene Wallace, moved into his home, and together they launched a kettlebell fitness business. Reinventing herself further, she began using a new name, Michele Williams. Nearly 2 years after Greg's death, Michele finally stood trial on October 9, 2013. Prosecutors faced an uphill battle. No DNA tied her to the crime. No fingerprints were found on the weapon, and no gunshot residue lingered on her hands, all because she had meticulously wiped everything clean. Investigators also conceded that the Keller Police Department, inexperienced in handling homicides, had made critical missteps during the initial investigation. Faced with the challenges of proving intentional murder, prosecutors extended a plea deal. Michele agreed to plead guilty to deadly conduct and tampering with evidence in exchange for an 18-year sentence. Yet she managed to stall her punishment. Claiming she was pregnant with twins, she persuaded the court to place her on house arrest. The judge ordered her fitted with an ankle monitor, allowing her to remain at home until she gave birth. While confined to house arrest, Michele couldn't resist the spotlight. She gave interviews to 48 Hours, loudly proclaiming her innocence, a direct violation of her plea agreement. As a result, the deal was revoked, thrusting her back toward a murder trial. Investigators soon uncovered troubling irregularities with her GPS monitor. Data showed no movement for weeks at a time, an impossibility. The truth was damning. Michele had been working at a strip club and even vacationing with Gene Wallace, all while supposedly confined to her home. When Michele appeared in court in January 2014, the truth came out: she was not pregnant. She claimed she had suffered a miscarriage, but the judge was unconvinced. Her bond was revoked, and she was sent back to jail. Michele's murder trial opened on September 23, 2014, with prosecutors laying out a case anchored in forensic evidence and witness testimony. One of the most striking voices came from Michele's own son, Andrew. He told the jury that Michele had confided her original intruder story was the truth, and that her later suicide confession had been the result of police pressure. Even more shocking, Andrew revealed that Michele had tried to draw him into a bizarre scheme, urging him to fabricate evidence that would implicate Greg's ex-wife, Kathy. Andrew refused to take part in his mother's scheme and ultimately cut off all contact with her. His brother, Lee, also took the stand, testifying that Michele had openly bragged about slipping out of her ankle monitor, a revelation that painted her as both defiant and manipulative in the eyes of the jury. Other evidence pointed to chilling premeditation. While in Denver with Greg, Michele purchased a book from Paladin Press, a manual detailing assassination techniques, poisons, and methods for changing identities. Financial records painted an equally troubling picture. Greg earning nearly $850,000 in the months leading up to his death, their accounts had plummeted from $110,000 to just $1,000. Investigators also uncovered that the financing for their new home was fraudulent, secured with altered account numbers. The prosecution cast Michele as a woman driven by greed. They argued she had married Greg for his wealth and the lifestyle it afforded her. When mounting financial pressures threatened to unravel that world, she chose the most ruthless solution, murdering him to cash in on his life insurance policies. After 6 days in court and 7 tense hours of jury deliberation, the verdict was delivered on September 29, 2014. Michele was found guilty of murder and tampering with evidence. The sentence was severe, 60 years in prison plus 10 years for tampering with evidence, ordered to run concurrently with no chance of parole until she had served at least 30 years. In a devastating impact statement, Greg's mother, Betty Middlebrooks, turned to Michele and spoke with raw grief. "You destroyed your family as well as ours. Greg loved and trusted you with his business and his life." Her words cut through the courtroom, a reminder of the profound loss and betrayal that no sentence could ever repair. What are your thoughts on this case? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into fascinating stories.